Hello, everyone. This is Josh Vision. I'm here to give my Last Kingdom Season 1, Episode 2 review and discussion. So, basically, in this episode, we have Uhtred and Brida, on the run from Uhtred's uncle. After basically Uhtred declared, with a decapitated head, that Bebbanburg is basically his. So, Uhtred and Brida are able to lose Uhtred's uncle's forces in the woods. So after that, they make their way towards this village, up north, and they know that the village has basically been massacred. Like everyone's essentially dead, I believe, except for one guy who shoots an arrow that barely misses Uhtred. And Brida sneaks up behind the guy, a good distance, not too far, but close enough, within axe range, throws an axe, and essentially breaks his back on impact. So, Uhtred asks a guy that, what happened to the village, and if you tell me, I'll put an end to your suffering. So the guy was like, you should know it was you people, the Vikings, that did it. And Uhtred was wondering why in the blue hell would the Vikings do this to basically a village that supplies them with food, water, and all that stuff. And he was like, because some Saxon basically um, killed his master and his family and all that stuff. And Uhtred and Brida automatically realized what had happened. That Carton and Sane, I believe, told to Ube or Uba, whatever the freak, that essentially that it was all Uhtred's fault. And basically, Uhtred and Brida trying to figure out, okay, how can they go about this? How can they save their skins, in this situation? They kind of make a joke about how, how Uhtred, I believe Uhtred said he wish he could just write to Ube and him to understand it, and Brida said, well, if only Ube, could read. So they're in the forest, resting, and Uhtred wants to hump, what I'm saying? So while during the humping and the anal, plundering, Brida gets the brilliant idea on how Uhtred can speak to Ube without getting his head decapitated, and that's by taking Ube's, I believe, sorcerer named Story. So Uhtred and Brida make it to East Anglia, where Ube and Guthrum and the rest of the Viking forces has the King Edmund, basically beat down, tied up, and already has taken over basically all of his kingdom and crap. So I believe Uhtred and Brida, they grab Story. Uhtred leaves Story with Brida. So he goes into this room where Ube and Guthrum are basically talking with King Edmund. And King Edmund's like, listen, before Uhtred even gets in the room, he tells Ube that, I'll allow you to continue being here, but only if you basically baptize yourself, and become Christians. And Ube and Guthrum's like, okay, what the freak is a baptism? And while they're asking this question, Uhtred comes into the room. And as soon as he comes to the room, Ube's like, who are you? And Uhtred's like, my name's Uhtred. I'm Ragnar's son. And then automatically, Ube's, the wheels start turning. He's like, oh, so you're the one that killed him. Okay, let me kill you right now. He said, yo, y'all close the door. And the Uhtred's saying that he had nothing to do with it. And Ube is like, you know what? You're lying, but whatever, screw it. Screw it. I got to deal with this guy first, the king, and then I'll deal with you. And then he asks Uhtred, by the way, what is baptism? And Uhtred's like, it's basically when you're put in cold water and your soul is kind of cleansed and all that stuff. And Uhtred and Guthrum's like, that sounds kind of weird, but they're kind of curious about it. And King Edmund talks about how great God is and all this stuff. He talks about Saint Sebastian because I believe Guthrum or Ube asked him about the painting of the saint, behind him. He tells them about how Saint Sebastian was basically killed by the pagans for his faith in Christianity, and that after a few days or so, I believe, he rose from the dead from the wounds or some crap, from the arrow wounds. So Ube says, listen, we'll convert to Christianity and do your little baptism if you survive us shooting arrows at you. And then Edmund tries to negotiate out of it, but he realizes it's kind of futile. So Guthrum asks him before they shoot the arrow. He said, "Is this really worth it?" And Edmund shakes his head. I mean, kind of shakes his head in affirmation, saying, "Yeah, it is worth it, and that God is good." So Ube gives a signal, and they shoot down King Edmund. R.I.P. So Uhtred, tries to explain to Ube that he had nothing to do with his father's, vicious murder. Ube's not having it. He's trying to kill him, and then Uhtred reminds him that he has his has a sorcerer story, and it was explained earlier in the episode that Story is like very close to Ube, and that like as a sorcerer, so everything Story says, Ube takes seriously, and that if anything were to happen to Story, that Ube will be lost essentially. So Uhtred basically is on his way out, and Ube is like, "Listen, I swear to God, I'm gonna kill you someday." Well, not really swear to God, but he was basically saying, "I swear I'm gonna kill you someday." And Uhtred's not really phased about it. So after that, Uhtred meets up with Brida. Brida during her little laid back time while Uhtred was speaking with Ube, she stripped Story naked, tied him to the back of the horse, and stuck a flower up his ass, And then after Ube returned, she basically hit the horse on the butt and sent Story right back towards Ube. So they're trying to figure out now what's the best option. So Brida comes up with the idea that maybe they could just go to Ireland and meet up with Ragnar the Younger, who's basically been a brother to them, since they were children. And Uhtred's like, that would be a good idea if, we could get a boat without being, not noticed. And that's highly unlikely, with both, the English and the Vikings around here, So they decide, I believe, to head towards Wessex. And they stay at Wessex for a few days or so. And while they're there for the few days, Uhtred asks one of the blacksmiths to make him a sword and to embed something. I forgot what it was, but something I believe his father gave him like years earlier into the sword. And Uhtred said basically, if you screw up the sword, I might kill you if you try to do some shady crap. So the blacksmith kind of lied and said, "Okay, I'll make your sword for you." So while this is going on, we have Father Beocca speaking with Alfred, or he's on his way to speak to Alfred. And when he comes to the door, he sees Alfred already had a very good time with, I believe, one of the servants of the court. Alfred is very apologetic about it. Like he feels really bad that he let the devil's temptations tempt him. That wasn't very Christian-like of him and all that stuff. But Beocca basically says that man are flawed, and that as long as they learn from their mistakes, that God will forgive him, And as well, I believe he talks about how he sort of suggests to Alfred, because Alfred was trying to basically at this point get rid of the servant girl from court. He's like, "How about you just have her be your personal servant, so that way every day you're tempted by her, you're proving you're making God proud by resisting her." So he agrees to that. Alfred asks Beocca about Uhtred. He says to him, "Isn't Uhtred a Viking, a pagan? Why should we trust him?" And Beocca is like, "Because basically I used to take care of him and teach him when he was a wee lad from baby to about 12, and that I know him, he's a good person." But Alfred's quick to correct him. He's like, "Hey, you did know him, but that was like years ago when he was a boy. He's a man now, and he's been with those pagans for years. So you don't really know what he's become during, the time lapse, during the years away. But, whatevs." So after that, we have Uhtred and Brida, after being discovered by some of the Vikings, in the town, make their way towards Wessex. And I believe, because I forgot what happened in the first episode, I believe there was some type of correspondence with Uhtred and Beocca in the first episode, to be honest with y'all. Because when he came in to Wessex, episode 2, he was straight up confident, like him and Beocca had they spoke prior, in episode 1. But like I said before, I forgot what happened in episode 1. I'm sorry, y'all. So, anyways, they have this really good reunion between Beocca and Uhtred. Beocca is kind of looking at Brida like, okay, like, doesn't really consider her, because we all know how Britta's very vulgar. She's very upfront and blunt, and especially for a woman during that time, it's kind of hard for men to deal with that straightforwardness. So we have this scene with Alfred, Britta, Uhtred, Beocca, and they're talking about the Vikings. Alfred basically lets Uhtred and Britta know he already knows what their issues are, because he has scouts all over the city. All over, the country of England, basically. And that they tell him, and he writes it down. He tells Uhtred and Britta the importance of knowledge, the importance of writing stuff down, because without writing stuff down, you're lost to history. No one knows who you are, what you did, your accomplishments, and all that stuff. And also, writing serves another purpose for the fact that what do you say? It makes it easier to kind of calculate and figure out the numbers of your enemies, where they're at, etc., etc. And he also talks about his goal of uniting England under one king, because that's the best way on how to make everyone united and all that stuff. So he asks Uhtred, what does he want for being in Wessex? He said that Father Beocca said that Uhtred's a good person and all that stuff. And he said even though that might be true, he's kind of doubts it, because one, he's a pagan. And from what he's been told from his scouts, Uhtred's trying to save his own skin. It has nothing to do with the saving of Wessex and the rest of England. It's basically about Uhtred saving the skin from his basically vengeful Scandinavian brothers, the Vikings. So he wants Uhtred to kind of prove himself. So Uhtred basically tells the council, the High Council, in Wessex, basically Alfred, his brother, Oda, and Oda the Younger, which is Oda's son, Oda the Younger, and the drunk kid, Alfred's brother's son, who's really just pathetic, honestly. Which is the best battle plan for, to fight the Danes, how they should basically be on the high ground, because the Danes, they love battle, and they're so confident against the English that they feel as though they can't lose one way or the other. So, that's what I remember from the conversation, but that's kind of the gist of it. So they all agree that that's a good idea, but Uhtred and Britta's thrown into jail, while they get ready for battle. And Alfred's reason for it is like, listen, if what you told us is true, then that's great. But you guys are still new here, y'all still pagans, so I can't completely trust you. So until this is kind of true and all this BS and all this stuff, we're going to have you in jail to keep an eye on you. So basically, the episode ends with the king suffering a very severe blow with an axe on one of the Viking soldiers. I believe it was Guthrum himself, actually, that gave the blow to the king. And that's how the episode ends. So if I missed anything, you guys, I'm sorry. I'll try to remember it for my next review. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Adios.